Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Crayden. And when we come back momentarily, I want to discuss, I think, one of the most frightening prospects facing Canada today. We'll be right back.
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need the resolve to resist.
Euthanasia. It's a topic that's come back to the forefront after a story ran very recently in Vice. Not necessarily a publication or an online publication that everybody is aware of, but it's becoming increasingly influential. And it did a story about how the medical assistance in dying program, MAiD, is going to be extended in March of 2024. Now, this is not unexpected. The Liberals put it on hold for a year because there was such pushback against this policy. And it's clear that's what this was all about. However, there was a conference, the Canadian Society of Addictive Medicine, and they discussed what mental health is in relation to drug addiction. Now, this is crucial to understand here because it's not like the government came out and said, guess what? Mental health means drug addiction and potentially alcoholism because it's all a drug, right? Even though there's huge differences between heroin addiction and alcohol. One will kill you a lot faster. One will kill you slower. But the government is clearly looking at ways to widen the scope of mental illness. And I can't overemphasize the danger in this because why is that important? It's because if we look at this here, the Canadian Centre for Addictions does provide a link between mental health and addiction. So this is not something that is unfounded. And I can't emphasize enough that if you want answers from the Trudeau government, you won't necessarily be getting them from ministers, or certainly not the prime minister. You've got to look at the study groups. And this is what I did with Trudeau's internet censorship bill, which is coming in the fall, the very latest, early winter. You have to look at the study groups. And in terms of what are the people saying about this potential legislation who are associated with the bill? And most of the people at this conference are participants in this legislation, either as doctors who are helping people to die or as theoreticians who are creating the framework for this legislation expanding. Now, we know this is going to happen. And what is dangerous about this is that we've always said that this is nothing more, nothing less than a euthanasia bill. You can call it what you want. You can make it sound innocuous, like it's assistance in dying. And you can say this is some sort of privilege. And that's exactly how they're trying to spin this. But it's very interesting that a Conservative member of Parliament from Abbotsford, BC, Ed Fast, who I know very well and have known for many years, he introduced a private member's bill very recently. He didn't think he was going to stop the medical assistance in dying program outright, but he thought perhaps we can curb the excesses of this legislation, of this program, by ensuring that it does not apply to the mentally ill. Now, he didn't extrapolate on what mentally ill meant, just that people who are mentally ill probably shouldn't be determining whether they want to commit suicide or not. This is, well, No pun intended. That is insanity. That is mental illness, to think we should be asking people with mentally ill health issues to determine their life or death. Now, Ed Fast introduced this bill. I was there twice in question period where he raised this bill as a question. Will the government support this bill? The government refused to answer his question. First of all, it was the Attorney General. Second of all, it was the Health Minister. Both of them refused to answer the question and would only say that they were continuing to examine this issue. The usual non-answer, right? Well, when they voted on this bill, it turned out the government allowed a free vote, and it was 167 to 50, meaning several Liberal and NDP members of Parliament supported Ed Fast's bill. Clearly, they're getting nervous. Why are they getting nervous? Well, I can tell you very, very easily why they're getting nervous. Because this has become a eugenics program. You get rid of people who have drug addictions, you're making a judgment about who is welcome and who is not welcome in your society. This is the same judgment that Nazi Germany made in the 1930s with its euthanasia program that targeted the mentally ill, yes, and the physically infirmed. So if you were handicapped severely and could possibly pass that impediment on to children, you were automatically targeted for euthanasia. If you were mentally ill, the assumption was, yes, you could pass that on to your children, potential children, and you had to be eradicated too. And that is the basis of eugenics. You're creating a master race or a so-called master race based on the assumptions of who you want in your society and who you do not. Now we're talking about drug addicts, potentially alcoholics. Who's next? People who are unattractive? People who don't speak well? Autistic people? Who is next in Trudeau's euthanasia game? And this is becoming frightening, absolutely frightening, because it's becoming expansive and it does become a slippery slope. I know it's a cliche, but it's true. Every time we go into forbidden territory and make something that we all know shouldn't be made legal, we go down a slippery slope and it becomes very difficult, if not impossible, to control the parameters of this toxic, evil legislation. And that's exactly what's happening here. Exactly. I'm going to tell you in a minute where this could even go farther and in unbelievable ways. But let's remember who is creating drug addiction in our Canadian society. Well, guess what? It's the same government that's pushing euthanasia. It's the same Trudeau government that's pushing euthanasia. I have never seen a government more enthusiastic about supervised injection sites. They call them safe drug injection sites. There's nothing safe about them. This is where addicts, usually heroin addicts, can go and legally shoot up heroin in the presence of supervisors who are there to ensure they don't overdose. Now, they might overdose the next night because they didn't drop in at the supervised injection site. Clearly, this is not a solution to a problem. This is increasing the problem, as the statistics are showing us from Vancouver, for instance, where the first injection site in North America was established. There are now 4 injection sites in Vancouver, and the drug problem, the opioid problem, the heroin overdose problem in Vancouver continues to rise and escalate every year to the point where it has reached record proportions. And this is all about how this government is not just hypocritical, but perverse. It's creating a drug addiction problem. not only through making it easier to ingest heroin, but providing free drugs on the street as a substitute for heroin, which we now know the addicts are selling on the street, sometimes to juveniles. They're getting the money and then they're buying the real stuff. So once again, the Liberal government is compounding the problem to a degree that is absolutely mind-boggling. Talk about creating a problem that you think you're going to solve. And how are they going to solve it? By telling people to commit suicide. If this wasn't actually happening today, I would say you can't make this up. And we're not. It's actually happening. So where else could this go? I mean, this is absolutely incredible. Have a look at this. The Quebec College of Physicians are suggesting that this program can be applied to severely ill newborns. If they have physical deformity or they're so mentally impaired they won't function normally in society, the Quebec College of Physicians says, why not apply MAiD to these people too? Why not apply euthanasia? And that's nothing short of eugenics again. And this is a frightening concept. Let's listen to some testimony at a joint committee.
Minors could, with their tutors or parental parent, could make a request for MAiD based on the level of persistent and intolerable suffering that they may experience and become unmanageable and senseless. The same for babies from 0 to 1 years of age who are born with severe deformations, very grave and severe syndromes, medical syndromes, whose life expectancy and level of suffering are such that it would make sense to ensure that they do not suffer.
So does that make sense to you? Does that make sense to you? The assumption being that they are somehow suffering and that we should intervene. Now, this is a Dr. Louis Waugh, who is a member of the Quebec College of Physicians, who's clearly telling a parliamentary committee that this is okay. And they agree with it. Now, will the Trudeau government agree with it? Why not? Because they've expanded the parameters beyond any kind of rationality. And this is the kind of society they are creating. Now, there's been some controversy about where this information came from in the last week, but it's all there if you dig deep enough. Just like, I've said in the past, if you want to know what's happening with the online safety bill, read what the government has been doing with its study groups and the response it's been getting back about what to put in the bill. The study groups have been telling them, don't define disinformation. That will make it much harder to enforce the bill. This is all on the government website. And this is what's happening right now with the euthanasia legislation, with the program that's already in place. How are they going to expand it? Well, listen to the people who are giving them advice. And that's how you discover what's going to happen next. And unfortunately, much of the mainstream media is not looking at this in a very serious way, in a comprehensive way. And we have to do that because this is legislation that is right out of Nazi Germany. And that's no hyperbole. That's not an exaggeration. That is an accurate assessment of what the Trudeau government is trying to do with a program that is toxic and evil. More than 10,000 people killed themselves in 2021 in Canada. More in 2022, we are sure, because it's going up every year. And in 2023, I don't know what the number is going to be. I'm predicting it's going to be over 12,000, though. And that's because Canada is the leader in the world for assisted suicide now. And we are a destination of choice for people who want to kill themselves. Is that what this country wants to be known for? Is that what Canada stands for? Well, it sure didn't at one time. That's not why people have invested their lives, their time, their energy, their money, everything into a country. Not to make it a suicide destination. And this is absolutely, absolutely outrageous. And it's interesting. As I sit here, we are on the verge of a nuclear cataclysm because of a war in Ukraine and a war in the Middle East, both of which must stop, but both of which the United States is poised to enter, and other countries are poised to escalate as well. And as we watch the news, it seems somehow unreal. It seems like we're watching a movie. It seems like this is just a play. But this is actually happening, just like euthanasia is actually happening in Canada. And we have got to fight back. I have said we cannot sustain 2 more years in Canada of the Trudeau government, but we have got to find ways to convince the NDP to stop propping up this government. To stop propping up this government, because it is allowing this liability to continue. And that's something that simply can't happen. I want to thank you for watching today, because you need to know what's actually happening in your country. And you need to know why we need change. And this is something that has gone way too far with this program. So thanks for watching today. And please continue to support this station. And please continue to listen and watch this message. Hi, this is David Krayden from Krayden's Right and Stand on Guard. Join the resistance. Resolve to resist. Become a member of this station. I've been practicing journalism in one form or another for over 30 years. I've worked in print, radio, and television for a lot of prestigious publications and media outlets. I was an Armed Forces Public Affairs officer. I worked in Parliament Hill. I know how Ottawa works, and I know how corrupt the federal government can be. But you can play a part in opposing Justin Trudeau's government and Justin Trudeau's plans for Canada. You can become a part of the Krayden's Right resistance. Now, I urge you today, please support this station in any way you can. Ring that bell, subscribe, because that ensures you're at least going to continue to be able to watch these episodes. You'll beat the algorithm. But more importantly, I need your financial support. I hate to ask, but that's what I'm doing. I made a decision to pursue independent media because I believed it was the best possible route for me to take as a journalist and as a concerned citizen of Canada. So you can become a part of that. And at only $5, you can become a part of that on YouTube, on Substack, and with Buy Me a Coffee, a one-time donation. But I need your support. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. If you've already done that, if you're already supporting the station, thank you. But if you haven't, make that decision today. Thanks for watching. We'll be back soon, and tune in for question period later today. We'll be giving you the usual insightful